Hello everybody, Ouija here. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite shows, RWBY. More specifically, we will be talking about the popular enigma known as Neo. How she probably has a split personality and how she came to be the Neo we know today. Now you may be wondering where this split personality idea came from. It comes from the new book Roman Holiday, the first 2 chapters to be specific. For those that aren't familiar with media outside the show, Roman Holiday is a book that explains how Roman and Neo met, as well as some of their backstories that is set to be released on September 7th. The first 2 chapters, however, were released on August 5th. In the first chapter, we are introduced to a brown-haired young girl named Trivia Vanille, and her pink-haired imaginary friend, Neapolitan, who are playing tag one night and wander into the family room, a room Vanille isn't allowed in. While they are playing, Vanille knocks over a vase and it shatters. Hearing her parents wake up, Vanille hides underneath the couch and Neo disappears. She almost manages to hide from them until she cuts herself on a piece of glass and gasps, leading them to find her. Vanille's mother, Carmel, attempts to coax her out by telling her she's not in trouble. It seems to work as she begins to leave, but before she can come out on her own, her father, Jimmy, grabs her by the legs and begins shaking her, yelling that if she speaks up for herself, she won't be in trouble. She tries, but all that comes out is a rasping sound. She's mute. Dropping her, the mother then starts talking to Vanille, asking her what happened, and Vanille spells out Neo, blaming her for it. Jimmy walks over and begins talking to the mother about how she wishes Vanille was normal. The mother reprimands him and he leaves, shouting at someone to clean up the vase. The mother then tells Vanille that a friend that abandons you to get in trouble isn't a good friend, before getting a little hostile, telling her to clean up the vase and go to sleep. From the first chapter, we kind of get Vanille's and Neo's personalities. Vanille appears to be a timid and scared girl who only does things at the behest of her much more carefree and mischievous friend, Neo. Now why does this chapter make me feel that Neo is another personality? Well, dissociative identity disorder is associated with overwhelming events, traumatic events, and childhood abuse. Vanille has 2 of these things. Being unable to talk is overwhelming for her, as she is treated as abnormal and her father seems to be both physically and emotionally abusive. Now you're probably saying, personalities don't manifest themselves like Neo. I have 2 theories about this. 1, remember, this is all being shown from Vanille's point of view, so who knows what's real. I don't think Neo will make any appearances in any chapters from Torchwick's perspective. 2, this could be a manifestation of her semblance, and semblances tend to reflect their user, as we see when Ren gets his semblance, which is about masking emotions. Ren, who's also very reserved. So it's not out of the question that her other personality manifested itself in her semblance. Now back to the chapter. After her mother and father leave, Neo shows up again, as Vanille is about to start cleaning. Neo stops her and stomps on the glass and prompts Vanille to do the same. She is hesitant at first, but then after a surge of anger at her parents, she does so, and runs off with Neo, leaving the glass on the floor. I believe this is the first time we see Neo take over the host. In psychology, a host is the most prominent personality in a DID patient. In this case, Vanille. Usually for another personality to take over, they need a trigger, which for Neo seems to be anger. But it is also possible for an alter to become the host. Usually this only occurs when the host's personality becomes inoperable, which I believe we will see later as Vanille becomes Neo. This is where the chapter ends, with the second chapter being about Torchwick, which ends the preview. So now I'll be talking about what I believe will happen in the rest of the book that will lead Neo to overtaking Vanille as the primary personality. The chapters in the book seem to be split up, with odd numbers being Neo's and even numbers being Torchwick's. This is what I believe will happen in the next couple of chapters, titled Painting the Town Pink and Hard Lessons. The first will involve Vanille led by Neo, getting into progressively more trouble, leading the father to get more and more severe with his punishments, and eventually leading him to getting violent with a 12-year-old Vanille in Hard Lessons, after Vanille embarrasses him at a public function when Neo convinces her to play a prank on one of the other dignitaries there. I know what you're thinking, this is similar to Weiss in Volume 5. That's on purpose. I think Neo can kind of be a reflection of what Weiss could have been. It also plays into how I think Volume 9 should play out. After this event, Neo disappears for a bit, leading Vanille to get depressed. In Falling Out Chapter 7, the mother manages to get the father to talk to Vanille. In Falling Out Chapter 7, the mother manages to get the father to talk to Vanille, but it just ends up with the father once again yelling at her for not talking before he hits her again. But this time Vanille snaps. One of her eyes turns pink and she hits her father back. After getting over the initial shock, Jimmy is overcome with rage and screams at Vanille. Her eyes turn stark white. Realizing what she has done, she runs away. After calming down, Vanille debates going back. Then Neo shows up once again. Vanille is elated to see her again, but is also angry at Neo for leaving her to deal with the consequences alone again. Vanille tries to convince her that she's better off without her parents. Vanille is hesitant, the words of her mother ringing in her head about what a bad friend does, but as usual, she relents to Neo's idea. This is the start of Vanille starting to question Neo. Sneaking into her house that night, she steals some Lyan and leaves her hometown. A couple weeks pass and Vanille's money is running short, so at the behest of Neo, she begins to steal food. She's hesitant to listen to her again. After all, while she may have played pranks and broken stuff, she's never done anything illegal, but eventually gives into Neo's influence and steals some food. Being clumsy though, Vanille doesn't get away clean. The owner of the stall notices her and gives chase. Halfway down the street, Vanille, realizing what she has done, stops, turns around and holds the food out to the vendor. In doing so, she for the first time defies Neo. The vendor takes a look at Vanille, sees how dirty she is, and lets her go with the food, making her promise not to do it again. Vanille nods and runs along. Turning the corner, she notices a piece of paper stuck to a wall, a missing persons report, with her face on it, with a reward on it for anyone who finds her. This gives Vanille pause. Did her parents actually care about her? Neo tries to convince her that it's a lie, but for the first time, Vanille doesn't know if Neo is telling the truth. Unfortunately, she's not the only one who notices the paper. Some of Little Miss Mouseshide's people do as well, and they begin tailing Vanille, figuring they can ransom her for more money. Eventually cornering her in an alleyway, Vanille, scared, begins to look around for Neo for help, but she's nowhere to be found. Before they can capture her, they are blown away by a dust explosion, and from the dust emerges a man with orange hair wearing a white suit, Torchwick, who seem to have the same idea. Before he can make his move though, more of Mouseshide's people show up and Vanille and Torchwick are forced to escape together. After they manage to escape, Torchwick asks what Vanille's name is. She tries to answer, but as usual, only a rasping sound comes out. Torchwick hums to himself before saying, "A mute, huh? That's fine with me, not a fan of chatty kids anyway," before he gives her a spare scroll and tells her to communicate through this. She asks him what he's going to do with her. He responds, "Oh, I'm going to return you, but it's going to cost him something extra," before holding out his hand to her. Neo tells her not to trust him, and for the first time Vanille blatantly ignores her, which annoys Neo. The next few chapters follow Vanille and Torchwick escaping Mouseshide's people, going from town to town. Across this time, Torchwick and Vanille grow more comfortable with each other, with Torchwick teaching her the tools of the trade and how to defend herself, something Neo picks up a lot easier than Vanille, being a lot more coordinated. And as they adventure and start to really discover who they are, this is when we start to see Neo's and Vanille's personalities really split, and the relationship splinter a little bit. Vanille is a much kinder person, and while she understands the necessity of their crimes, she prefers to go about it with as little violence as possible, even avoiding stealing from the less fortunate people. Her kinder personality even starts to affect Torchwick, even if it's just a little bit. Like, instead of beating somebody and stealing their clothes, he just threatens them and steals their clothes. No violence necessary. Which, I mean, is not a lot better, but Torchwick is a bastard. Neo is quite the opposite, acting just like we see Neo act in the show. Ruthless and professional, with no care for who she's taking from. As comes with personality clashes like this, Vanille starts to listen to Neo less and less, which Neo does not like, especially with her knowing that returning to her parents and that potential abuse is still in the back of her mind. And she starts to suspect that the host personality may not be what's best for their shared body. And Vanille and Neo start to like Torchwick more, but for different reasons. Vanille likes that Torchwick doesn't treat her like an outcast for being mute. He seems to accept that. And Neo loves Torchwick's lifestyle, the stealing and everything, it's exhilarating to her. Torchwick even buys her a weapon to protect herself, a parasol with a hidden blade, and Vanille and Neo finally experience the freedom they always wanted. Though Vanille can't help but think about the poster and her parents. Eventually, Vanille gets comfortable enough with Torchwick to introduce him to her best friend Neo. So one night, Vanille waves Torchwick over and types "Meet Neo," and with a flashy move with her arms, points at nothing, at least from Torchwick's point of view. Torchwick makes a joke about her being her imaginary friend. This annoys Vanille, who stomps her foot, one eye briefly flashing pink, her aura flashing from white to pink as well, which catches Torchwick's eye. Torchwick waves her off. Alright, she exists, but maybe not in the way you think. After weeks of evading Mouseshide's people, they are cornered, and Torchwick cuts a deal with them, that they share the ransom money. Before making the call, Torchwick asks Vanille if this is what she wants. Neo shakes her head, but Vanille ignores her, thinking back to the poster. Vanille nods her head, believing, as any child would want to, that maybe her parents did love her. Neo gives her a look, as if to say, "Fine, but when this goes wrong, don't come to me," before disappearing. Torchwick makes the call, and they set up a meeting spot with the parents, making them agree to not bring anybody with them. Neo makes no more appearances along the way to the meeting point, seemingly shunning Vanille for not listening to her. Arriving at the meeting point, Tortrick and Vanille enter the abandoned warehouse, and across the room stand Jimmy and Carmel. But instead of looks of relief on their faces, they bear only annoyance. As soon as Vanille makes it over to them, Jimmy begins berating her. How could you do this to the family? What were you thinking? Vanille uses her new scroll to type Neo, and this absolutely enrages her father. Backing the scroll over her hand, he starts yelling, Neo, are you serious? You still refuse to take responsibility for your actions. Keep this through your head, Neo doesn't exist. Before ending his rant with, maybe it would have been better if you just disappeared. And this breaks Vanille. This one strikes hard for Vanille. She thought maybe, just maybe, that her parents cared. But they don't. That Neo is right, as she always was. And this breaks Vanille. She shuts down. Then Neo makes her appearance, slowly circling Vanille, a smirk on her face, as if to say, I told you so. At this point, the pieces about Neo start to fall into place for Vanille, and she comes to the realization that Neo is a part of her. Neo then stops in front of Vanille, extending her hand with a look that says, let me take over, and nothing will hurt you or our friend again. Tired and broken, Vanille takes her hand. During this, Tortrick's knuckles begin turning white from how hard he's gripping his cane. But before he can say anything, he sees Vanille reach for a weapon. Her aura flickering from white to pink, her hair turning a familiar ice cream shade. Pink, brown with a little bit of white. The alt personality has taken over the host. Her parents back up, seeing this. Frightened, they ask, who are you? She just smirks before signing, Neo. And then she cuts her father down, then her mother. Turning around to walk back towards Tortrick, she notices her father's hat on the ground. A black and red bowler hat. Eyes flashing white, she has a brief flashback to when she was 4, where her father put the hat on her head when she reached up for it. One of her few good memories. Picking it up, she hands it to Torchwick, typing, it'll look better on you. Torchwick puts on the hat, before extending his hand saying, I suppose that you're Neo. What happened to Vanille? She nods, typing nice to meet you, before shaking his hand and pointing to the white splotch in her pink hair. With this, Neo has become the Neo we see today. Now I'm guessing you're asking, what happened to Vanille? Does she just disappear? And if Neo is pink and Vanille is brown, where does the white come from? No. In DID, personalities don't disappear. They can, however, become dormant, and for the most part, that's what I think has happened to Vanille. To the second question, Vanille's name means vanilla in French. Vanille, which is white. I believe the white in Neo is supposed to represent Vanille's soul, her personality. And that's why the white is located in the pink, because it is trapped behind Neo's personality. It's why we rarely ever see her white eyes. Which is why I believe we have seen Vanille in the show once. You see, just like Neo, Vanille has a trigger. In her case, fear. And when is the only time we've seen white eyes? When Neo was afraid for her life in Volume 2. And when Neo was afraid, what did she do? She immediately backed down and ran away, something much more befitting of Vanille's personality than Neo's. And that is how I believe Vanille will come to be Neo. So what did you guys think of this theory? Do you think there's any truth to it at all? You think I'm way off base, somewhere in the middle? Let me know your thoughts. And if you like this, maybe I'll come back, because I do have some thoughts on how Volume 9 will play out. And it ties into this theory if it is right. Because I don't think it's a coincidence that they introduced Vanille right before Volume 9. I think she might make an appearance in there. So if you like this video, give it a like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Ouija out.